by shifting my authentic code, my overall perspective was starting to shift. The season of my life was shifting because I was preparing for this.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins. Welcome back to another process episode, which is where we showcase one of our pathway members who have gone on to manifest something extraordinary or big within their life. May it be career, home, relationship, financial. This has become one of your favorite podcast segments that we have, as we can tell by the numbers. And one commonality that I want to make that you'll begin to recognize each of these pathway members share in common from past episodes to new is that not one of them simply dipped their feet into the work or flirted with it. They went all in. I've been able to see this recently with my dad who's doing the work. They sort of touch in, don't really do the DIs, do it once in a while, skip around the workshops without finishing them. Whereas what you'll listen to with each of these episodes, these are the people that started with how to manifest, moved into shadow, moved into inner child, did all of the workshops, listened to every one of the supported classes, which is our once a month class where Jessica and I go through in the pathway answering members' questions. And then they've gone on to listen to every podcast episode. That's what you will hear from each of the pathway members that we share on this. And not because we're only picking people who do that, the ones who actually manifest the big things, they go all in. And not only that, but once they've gone through the work, and they get a baseline of it, they make it their own. So a past guest, Heather Whitaker, you heard that in the Deep Imaginings, she started out with them, listening to them, and they weren't as effective to her. So she figured out her own process that when she walks on hikes, she talks the prompts aloud. So she'll listen to them in her earbuds. Once she's heard the prompts, she then goes and talks out what's been prompted until she gets to the block, and then she reprograms it. And you have to imagine, even as you're walking and listening, you're in a hypnotic state because your brain, your conscious mind isn't flying around. You've now gone into an alpha or a theta. So that's what you'll also find in commonality with these members. They make it their own. They don't stop when they get a roadblock. They actually figure out their own way through it. Today will be no exception. So I'm going to kick it over to my co-host, Jessica Gill, who you've heard on the Explained episodes and the Process episodes, as she highlights another really exciting member within the pathway and how they've gone on to manifest something extraordinary.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Process. We have not had a process in a while, so this is really exciting. We've just had so many other episodes to share with you guys, but I know you love the process episodes, and there's so much takeaway from these. I'm really excited about this because this is the first time we're doing it. Someone in the Pathway group, community group, actually mentioned this, but the idea of having old process guests on again to see kind of where are they now? What have they manifested since then? You know, what have they called in? And we couldn't think of a better person to be our first Where Are They Now episode with Heather Whitaker. Heather is now a TBM coach with us, which is incredible. And you can hear her first episode with us below, where we met her at the speaking tour and just was so blown away by how much she had manifested at the time. And it's so amazing now to see since that year, since the episode when we recorded, how much has she's even grown from there. I mean, she was a manifesting wizard back when she was first on, calling everything from her wedding dress, her proposal, her house, her engagement, the place she was going to get married. I mean, it was all just boom, boom, boom. And she had done so much work to get there. And then in the past year since she's been on, it's been really stepping into her ease and grace and deservingness and leaning more into the beautiful things that come with that. She's a very, very special announcement and surprise to share with you guys in this episode. So I know you're going to love it. There's so much takeaway. And as always, Heather really does a great job at detailing how she utilizes this process and makes it her own. Enjoy. I'm so excited today because we have one of our TBM fan favorites, Heather Whitaker, back on the podcast to talk through her process of manifesting even more since the last year. So just to kind of fill you guys in, if you haven't tuned into Heather's first episode with us, which we'll link in the show notes, Heather came on, we met you at the speaking tour. She had this very kismet story of having a lizard in her bag, and then she was called on stage and basically just really was such an expander for everyone in the audience because she had manifested her wedding dress, her ring, her engagement, her house, self-love, better relationship with herself and her partner. I mean, the list was endless, and she is so in her worth and was just like, yeah, this is what I deserve. I'm giving my lack back to my mom. I'm giving this limiting belief back to that person. And here I am, world, let's go. Like, I deserve everything. And it was so empowering to hear. And I actually listened back to the episode before recording this because I was where were you at? Yeah, because I was like, where were we at last year? Like, because it aired in January before the pandemic hit. And it was so interesting because one of the things you mentioned in it, you're like, 2020, you wanted it to be the year of sort of enjoying your manifestations and really like leaning into this up level that you had just created over the past year. And obviously, 2020 had some hardships for a lot of people, but you manifested even more this past year.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for that, Jessica. I need to go back and listen. It's so fun when people reach out to me and say, I just listened to your episode. And because we actually recorded that in November of 2019. I mean, that was before going into 2020 and knowing what it looked like. And, after it aired in 2020, I mean, my whole life changed in the sense of becoming, a TBM coach. And then just really taking the year, like you said, to kind of, I wanted to not only receive everything that came in 2019, but I wanted to explore a little bit more for my biggest manifestation to come through, which is a baby.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations. I mean, it is the abundance baby factory over here.
Oh my gosh. I know. Lacey and I text back and forth. It's crazy. And I'm so excited to share this process with you, with everybody, because I spent an entire year prepping for this. Honestly, I hate to say the actual act of having a baby is the easy part because, obviously everyone has their own struggles, but it was everything that went into it. And so I really wanted to take the opportunity to talk about how I used TBM in this process so that other people can feel expanded and empowered to use this work, to whether you figured out that you do want a baby or that you don't. But the resources and tools that we offer within the pathway, I couldn't have gotten to where I am today if it wasn't for everything that I was able to use along the way.
Absolutely. And I want to be mindful too of anyone out there who's really struggling to conceive or is trying to call in a child and having difficulty. We just got through sort of this month the new envy and jealousy DI and transforming this idea of, another person, got pregnant around me and I'm not able to get pregnant or whatever that thought may be. And we really, obviously if things are too triggering, don't tune in. But if you can transform that energy to expansion, and C, to believe that, you know, parts of you are just like Heather or just like Lacey or just like any other friend that's getting pregnant. And there's no reason to believe that you can't either. I think that's what's really, really powerful. And then for people who aren't calling in babies, apply this to your manifestation. You know, apply this process of ease that Heather is going to take us through all the steps of to whatever you're calling in. Because really, you know, the energetic of a baby is family, is home, is connection to self, all of those things. So are you calling in something in home or connection to self or in a relationship of another sort or healing a relationship with family? The same tools and the same process can still be applied.
I love that. And I think the moral of this story is that when you find out, and I kind of have said this before in a supported episodes, like you're fast track to magnetism, meaning whether that's jumping off cliffs or setting boundaries, right? Saying no and, you know, following pings or surrender, that when you start to realize what your fast track is, you can actually apply that. So mine is surrender, releasing control. So I was able to use that in this particular instance. But so I say that because like you said, Jess, that if it's not about calling in a baby, but it's about realizing that when you find what works for you, you can plug and play into that, into any one of your manifestations.
Okay, I'm so interested. So talk more about this fast track with surrender. And how did you find that surrender was one of those things that kind of sped up your manifestations?
Because I like control, because I like it, because I constantly try and manipulate and to see like, oh no, I'm in surrender, when it's like, no, Heather, you're actually trying to control. And so, especially when it comes to, you know, to conceiving and having a child, there is so much that is out of your control, right? And so, I mean, it took a while. And so I kind of want to start just from the beginning of what this looked like, because so much of the first half of 2020 really didn't have anything to do with the actual process of having a child. It was the discovery, you know, and I haven't talked a lot about this, but, you know, I've struggled with my relationship with food and disordered eating for, you know, a good 20, 25 years. And so I knew going into 2020 that if we were really going to consider having a child, I needed to heal that. And so, you know, I needed to have a better relationship with food and my body going into it, because that was, you know, I was going to be a vessel and a home, maybe, right, for a baby. And so I committed on January 1st of 2020 to stop calorie counting, to stop weighing my food, and really understand what does intuitive eating. And I'm a sacral center for as a manifesting generator in human design. And so I really needed to use my gut. But because I liked control so much, I stopped using my gut. I didn't even know what I liked, which I know is really crazy to say. But when you're so used to just macro counting and food prepping, it doesn't matter what you like as long as it fits your macros. And so it took me a really long time to understand, what do I like? How do I feel? Which is what I talk about so much in this work, is how does it feel? So that was the beginning of 2020, was to really heal my relationship with food, because I wanted my body to be a part of the process, you know? And then I reached out to the TBM community. And this is before we had our latest community group within Mighty Networks. This is still when we had the Facebook group. And I just reached out and I was really transparent. And I just said, is anyone in this group, you know, a mother of young children who is still doing the work? I was so afraid, like a big, huge fear of mine was losing the relationship that I had finally built with myself. I mean, I had avoided myself for so many years. I avoided my thoughts. I avoided feelings. I was a stacker. As much as I could not be quiet and sit with myself, I did that for so long. Then when I found TBM, I became my own best friend. I became my most favorite person to talk to. And the thought of having a child in my mind threatened that. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm willing to give up this relationship with myself. Which sounds kind of silly, but it's something that came up for me.
I don't think so at all. I resonate with that so deeply because so many people around me right now are having kids. And I'm like, is that a sign that I'm supposed to have kids soon?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, I'm not ready. I'm still forging that relationship with myself and healing tons of things. So that's not silly at all. I completely relate to that.
Yeah. And it was a level of selfishness that I was like, I don't know if I'm willing to give this up. And I'm okay with saying that. And the community is so wonderful. I had so many people say like, that they treat themselves better now as a mother than they did when they weren't, because, your children are mirrors to you. Children become expanders. And it was beautiful. It was honestly so, so beautiful. And I continued all of last year and even now to find expanders, whether that's in my friend group, on Instagram. It's like, I didn't know like what kind of mother I wanted to be, or I didn't know anything. And so I just really reached out to the community and paid attention to what type of information was I consuming. Then I decided to do inner child, but as I was the parent who was reparenting my unborn children. And this was really powerful because so much of the work I've had to do with my own mother is the lack of trust in myself, because she didn't have trust in herself. She didn't have trust in her own mother. So much of the limiting beliefs around trust, which is why I like control, I needed to show, oh gosh, I kind of feel emotional for a second. I needed to show my unborn child that I was going to teach him or her to trust itself, and that I was going to do everything I could to make sure that they felt a connection to themselves and that they could be who they were. And so that was really powerful to go through that program. And even though I was still on the fence, I didn't even know if I wanted to be a mom yet.
That's what I was going to get into too. So it's kind of sounding like, you started the year wanting to heal these things. If you decided that you wanted to be a mom, you could, but you weren't like, I want a kid now. You were kind of like, well, if I do want one, I'm going to have to heal these things before I can even make that decision. So let's work on that and see where we end up.
And so my husband's name is Luke, and I know I've talked about him on the podcast. Like he and I, so I'm going to be 37. He's going to be 43. We're not spring chickens anymore. We've lived a really selfish life, and we both agreed that if we didn't have children, that we were going to be okay. And that if we decided to, it was going to be wonderful, but that we were open to anything that was going to come and what was meant for us. And so, I wasn't totally truthful with him in my whole discovery period, just because it was just so much, I'm just like, I'm just going to kind of keep this to myself a little, but I know that he could see I was becoming inquisitive and I would start to talk about it. And now and then it would be like, what if we really did do this? Because of course, as soon as you get married, people are like, are you having kids? And my response was, we don't know. And it's wild when you see people like look at you like, what do you mean? And so my response was, well, we are going to be really intentional about it. We're going to make sure that if and when this happens, we're ready, that we know our lives are going to change, and are we ready for that? And if we're not ready for it, then we'll wait. And so it kind of throws people off when you say that, but that was an authentic answer that I was okay with sharing with people.
I love that response, because I think that's a really good opportunity to set your own boundaries and not abandon yourself, because so many times we'll want to people please and we'll just tell people what they want to hear. Like when people ask me, I'm like, yeah, in a few years. I don't know if I want kids in a few years, but I'm abandoning myself because I'm not saying my truth in order to make them comfortable. And so by you doing that, you're really honing in on your own self-worth and keeping that high.
Totally. Then I wrote, which is like, this is so funny. I basically was like coaching myself because I have my clients do this. I wrote down all of my fears around either becoming a mom, not being able to become a mom, like everything that came down to it. I wrote every single one down. And then next to it, I wrote, is this true to me? Does this actually make sense to me? Is this something I picked up? Have I personally experienced this fear before? Do I have a solution for this? And things came up of like what if I can't get pregnant, right? Or, what if all of a sudden I'm on bed rest? I mean, like I just literally wrote down everything possible so that I could see, like if I have a miscarriage, like whatever it may be, I wanted to put all of the fears out so that way it was like kind of that worst case scenario. I wanted to be aware of what it looked like. And going into it, I could see, okay, well, this doesn't actually apply to me, or, well, this is the solution if this happens, or, okay, well, I have trust and this is out of my control. So I really made sure that I was aware of what all of that looked like so that as any tests were coming up or any triggers were coming up, I could always go back to my list of fears just to like, okay, this is where it's coming from and this is probably the root of it.
I love that so much. And I think for people who struggle with the control aspect, putting it all down, and it's almost like a form of releasing that control, because you're saying, okay, here are the roots of all of the fears, and these are the ones that are based in potential of happening, and these are just not real at all. And it allows you to move into a state of surrender because the control has gone into the list.
Totally. And because then it wasn't shocking. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's all out there. And then over the summer, we got a puppy, and that just really rocked my world. I was never an animal person, and Luke has been wanting a dog for so long. And obviously it was the pandemic. We were home. I ran out of excuses. We had a backyard. and so we got a puppy. We got a golden retriever. Her name's Indiana. We call her Indy. And it just shifted my perspective because she really kind of wrecked my routine, honestly. And I was like, oh my God, this is the test of like, because I was so afraid of what this would look like. And I figured it out. I changed up that I could do DIs while walking her, or I could do DIs later in the day versus first thing in the morning. And I feel like the universe brought us Indy to kind of show me I can be adaptable, because I tend to be very black and white. As much as I try not to be, it's very natural for me to be a little bit more structured because it's safe. And having a puppy, she just became my little companion. I couldn't believe how much I talked to her. And because Luke travels for work, it was just, and we had a scare once where she ate a pillow and she was up all night throwing up. And I just remember being on the floor with her and just kind of rubbing her head and just saying like, it's okay. Like, I'm here for you. And it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I'm mothering this puppy right now. Like, I'm doing it, So I feel like the dog really changed that,
It's so funny because we had a social distance, like outdoor park picnic sort of thing for TBM. And Heather brought Indy, and Indy was just like wild child puppy face, so much energy, just bopping around from one spot to the next. And it was funny because I saw you through the lens of a parent in those moments, like as you were chasing after her and caretaking her and make sure her needs were met, but also make sure she wasn't like, destroying people's lawns or anything.
Yeah.
You were parenting. And it was like, oh, wow, like this is so interesting to see this whole other side of Heather getting expressed. And it seems like Indy was such the expander to sort of open your heart in so many ways.
Totally. And my family and my friends have said that, of just like watching the process. And so that was really cool. And then actually even seeing Luke with Indy, like my heart would just melt. And it was just like, oh my God, if my heart melts seeing him with a puppy, like I can only imagine with a baby, So cut to September of last year of 2020, we decided like, okay, yes, I got my IUD taken out. I had a copper one, so there was no hormones in it. And we were like, all right, we had talked about it enough. I had done enough prep work that I was like, okay, we'll just see. I have no idea how long this is going to take, but let's just see what this looks like. And what's funny is that I had no idea about anything about my body. And so I think that so many women don't, about ovulation and understanding what all of that looks like, because you just don't pay attention, or at least I didn't. And so I really spent October and November and December like getting to know my body, Luke ended up being on location for a few months, and it really gave me an opportunity to figure it out. And I ended up purchasing something called the Mira fertility app. And basically it's like this little computer thing, and you like pee into a cup, and you kind of like are starting to check your different hormones I had no idea about. And so again, it was like, oh my gosh, I really need to educate myself. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so it was a really cool experience of just learning about what that looks like throughout the month and paying attention and feeling it. And so
sorry, just to interrupt real quick, where would you recommend, because I'm sure there's so many women at home or people at home thinking, where do I start? Yes, I need to learn that too. I don't know, and we've had Elisa Vitti on before, and she has some incredible books on the topic, but where did you find some of your resources?
So I actually read the Elisa Vitti book and used that app for a really long time. But I just knew that I probably needed a little extra help versus the guessing game. So when I started looking at ovulation trackers, before I did it, I had to ask myself, am I using an ovulation tracker for control? And it wasn't. But I checked in because I needed to check to see, if I purchase this, is this me controlling? And when I realized it wasn't, it was about learning, I felt comfortable with it. But again, I'm really trying to make sure that my energy and my action are in alignment. And so I really try and ask myself, if I take this action, what is the energy behind it? Is there control? And there wasn't. And so when I was looking up different ovulation trackers, I saw that Mira made it really simple. It also was covered through insurance, which was great. And so, yeah, that's the one I went with because it was going to explain to me a lot of things that I didn't understand because I didn't make a huge effort in understanding that at 36 years old. And then, and I know I've talked about this before, but I decided to change my authentic code. And this was a really big deal for me because I realized that I needed to change this idea of forward movement, who I had really identified myself with, and kind of, it was, a form of self-protection of, constantly moving forward. And I ended up changing it to ease. And I know I've mentioned that, but not only did I add ease to my authentic code, but I also added nurture because I wanted to nurture myself, a possible baby. I wanted to nurture my clients. And so by shifting my authentic code, my overall perspective was starting to shift. The season of my life was shifting because I was preparing for this. I also ended up turning down a job that, oh gosh, it was totally in alignment. Everything, the purpose, the mission, the money, but it was a startup. And I chose ease and the possibility of having a baby over the exciting idea of a startup, because when I had to sit back to look to see, like, is this going to be the environment that is going to feel easeful in bringing in a child? It wasn't, which felt like a rock bottom and an up level all at the same time. But I just was really needing to make different decisions in my life. And that's kind of what hit me, other than, seeing I could mother a puppy. But I was like, wow, now I am making decisions in my career based on something that, okay, I think I'm ready for this. That was a really big deal for me to see that.
The other thing that's really interesting too is, like, during this period, you started coaching for TBM. And so it's so fascinating how the universe really magnetizes us closer to the lessons that we need in order to have our manifestations come through, even when we don't know if we want the manifestation to come through or not. Like, your soul kind of was calling to that and was calling to be prepared and see if you were able to do it. And now you have these real tangible situations where in a coaching session, you are nurturing a client. You are literally a caretaker, an important role model in their life, and there's a certain responsibility there. The same thing for a dog. You're caretaking, nurturing, and there's a responsibility there. And these are all the same themes that are involved with parenting. It's obvious, like, of course the universe did that, but then it's just like you have to go back and connect the dots, because in the moment you're like, oh, this great thing happened. Oh, now we're getting a dog, and not really noticing how intertwined all of them are to serve you on your highest good.
100%. And it's because I allowed myself to be open to it without an attached outcome. It was in a place of discovery is really what it was. And I love creating my own voice memos. So I created a voice memo around consciously reinforcing ease. I created a voice memo about getting pregnant and the process of it. I included my expanders in this voice memo. I included how it would feel, to learn I was pregnant, to what it would be like to carry the baby, what it would feel like afterwards. And, it was anywhere from like 4 to 5 minutes long. And I would just listen to it weekly and just kind of prepare myself so that, when we talk about conscious reinforcement, this is about the feeling. I wanted to tap into what it would feel like to find out I was pregnant, what it would feel like to be pregnant, and what it would feel like afterwards, so that I could prepare myself for that if it was going to happen. And, listening back to it now, it's really beautiful. And so I'm a big proponent of creating your own little voice memo, because it's like a little love note to yourself.
When you listen back now, like what it would feel like once you're pregnant and now actually being pregnant, how similar is it, that feeling, or that, what you were sort of projecting for the future?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't describe, with the feeling of when you actually get to be in the doctor's office and watching, watching the baby up on the screen when you're getting the sonogram and everything done. But it's very similar. It's just this idea of something that's so much bigger than yourself. And, I think that another thing for me, again, this is kind of all still leading up to before I actually got pregnant, was I realized that I'm in my masculine a lot. I have a really hard time stepping into femininity and changing my authentic code. Like ease feels very feminine to me, but that forward movement of the hustle and the drive and the constantly up leveling was very masculine. And it was really hard for me, because having a corporate day job and then coaching, to switch on from being in my masculine all day to all of a sudden having to try to be feminine to my husband, it was really difficult. This is something that I need to work on. I realized it was a limiting belief. It was blocking me. And it wasn't a fear, like I couldn't find the femininity, but it was something I knew that I needed to work on in the process of getting pregnant.
So what I'm thinking in my mind is I love the ease. I always think about that when I am calling in like my magnetic mom, like I'm just getting ease in my expanders, all of that. But I also really love that masculine up level success. I mean, success is like one of my authentic codes right now. Did you want to shift out of that masculine, or did you still want to keep, like, did you still enjoy parts of it, or were you trying to not tap into it at all?
I was trying to have a better balance.
Okay.
And I know balance is a hard word. I was trying to have a harmony of masculinity and femininity, because this scale was tipped over in my masculine. It's something I know really well. It's something I witnessed in my mom and in my stepmom. They are workhorses. And so I too do the same, which is programming, and I've done a lot of work around that. And so I needed to figure out, like, what does it mean to be feminine, where it's not just like red lipstick and high heels,
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? So a good friend of mine is an intimacy coach. Her name's Katie. And I worked with her. I did a session with her on what does it mean to be intimate with myself. And I don't just mean that from a sexual standpoint, but that was understanding that, like, taking a shower slower, doing my face like creams and stuff at a slower pace. And, what made me feel sexy, and music does that for me, but I wasn't even giving time to like listen to music anymore. And so I just was tapping into that, and even my workout clothes, because it's not like I'm getting dressed these days. Like, I ended up buying different workout clothes to where I felt more confident in my own body. And of course, Luke picked up on it, but I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for myself because I wanted to have a better intimate relationship with myself on what were my desires and could I be in a place of receiving them. And I think that receiving is very feminine, but if I'm constantly doing and not slowing down, how can I receive? And so I really, really, really ended up turning I'm in a place to receive as my mantra. I mean, I said it to myself every night before bed and every morning before I got out of bed. I'm in a place to receive. And whatever that meant, whether that was a place to receive love for myself, a place to receive intimacy, a place to receive a baby, it was a really good reminder of, to me, a place of receiving is femininity. And some days I put perfume on just for myself, and one thing she said is that women have a feminine call, but if you're not using it, how could, your partner pick up on it? And I definitely was not using it and it wasn't being picked up on. So I needed to kind of change that on breath work and visualization. And I needed to be able to go in and out of masculine and feminine, being aware, because before everything was just so black and white. Everything was about power and everything was about getting ahead, and slowing down is really, in my opinion, where I needed to be with ease and receiving.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest, to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode.
And that even just brings me back to you turning down the job offer that was so aligned, because if you were not in ease, then that's right up your alley. Success, next level, money, title, whatever it is. That sounds great. That checks so many career boxes.
Yeah.
But your worth was no longer tied to that.
And so I shifted, and then I was like, okay, so I really want to carry out this feeling. And so I ended up working with a yoga nidra teacher. Her name's Ariana, and she's so fantastic. She wrote my own yoga nidra script. I told her I wanted to be in a place of receiving. I wanted to tap into my femininity. And could she create a script for me to do that? And so she used the word yoni for me so that we could use that as a place of feminine power, right? So there was still power there. And I would listen to it at night or in the morning or whenever. And it was about just tapping into my body and to get into a place of receiving, but also, again, just this idea of slowing down when I really like fast paced. It's just something I thrive on. And so much of this was trying to shift down and gear down. And so I was looking at how can I shift my mind yet have the reaction felt in my body. And then I ended up working with Alexis Smart.
Love her.
Yeah, I know. I was able to get a personal session with her. And I just told her, I said, Alexis, I want to be in a place of femininity to receive, to possibly get pregnant. You know, and in no way was she like, oh, I'll guarantee that you can get pregnant by using so I want to state that. But what we did was we worked on clearing some of the trauma in my life from the attack, from things that happened with my mother, with the flower remedy. And so on top of DIs and all of the work I was doing with TBM, on top of me tapping into femininity, on top of me using the Yoga Nidra, I used a flower remedy I told her, I was like, I need to slow down. And so she created one. And honestly, Jess, all I wanted to do was organize and eat rice.
That actually sounds pretty fabulous.
I know. I was like, oh, this is actually working. I felt the whole shift in my body of just like the motivation to like work out really hard kind of slowed down. I really wanted to walk. I wanted to be in nature. And I was kind of like, okay, like this is working, you know? And mind you, Luke's gone. He doesn't know anything that's going on, which is just hilarious.
Come
right?
back a whole new woman.
I know. Yeah. And so cut to December, you know, I'm almost at a year now of prepping and Luke's finally home after being gone for months. And I will say a week before we conceived, I was doing a DI and I felt a spirit baby.
What DI were you doing?
I was doing health and body.
Okay, I love it.
I was doing the health and body DI and I read Spirit Baby. So I read it. Actually, Lacey recommended it to me. And this sounds crazy. Like this has never happened to me before. I've never interacted with spirits of any kind. But it was so strong that I had to stop the DI and I ended up writing a letter to the baby. I introduced myself. I introduced Luke and Indy. And I just said who we were and what we could teach the baby. And that if and when the baby was ready to come, that we were ready to receive it. And it was just, I've read it a few times and it's really beautiful because I felt it. And so it was really special that now I have it written down of before it even was actually there. Like there was something floating around and kind of, you know, just orbiting my being. And it was really, really special. And I do want to say that, yes, I did a lot of work to get into a place of receiving, but I don't want to act like no anxiety didn't come up or control around this. And I will say that in the process, right, of conception, as much as I wanted to be in surrender, there was a day that I wasn't. And I think it's really important that I say this, that I felt like we missed our window. We didn't, but I didn't know that. And I freaked out. I mean, I had a full meltdown and I immediately went to the work. I immediately did a DI. I went to the trigger DI. And that's when I realized I was trying to control and I felt really paralyzed because it felt as if time was not on my side. And when I wrote it all down and could see it, I just took that moment and said, everything I've ever received was when I was in a place of surrender. So why would this be any different? Why is it that in this moment I want to control? If this is meant to happen, it will happen. And so doing the trigger DI allowed me to calm down. And that's the best part about this work. And I know, obviously I'm a coach, so I'm a huge believer in it, but you always have the work as your resource, as your tool, as your guide. And in the moment where I could have spiraled, I did a DI and I was able to land and come down. And I think that that's what is so important also about this work is that's not to say that we'll never be triggered because we will, but how long will you sit in the trigger is the non-tangible win. So yes, I was triggered and yes, I had a full meltdown of like, oh my God, I missed it. And then I did the DI and wrote it all out and was just like, no, I've got this. My fast track is surrender and I'm not in surrender right now. And so, yeah, I really, really want to say that I leaned on DIs during this whole process when I would get triggered, when tests were coming up, when I was trying to figure out my fears. I did all the things and I am just really, really grateful that I was able to lean on it, you know?
I think that's so, so, so important that you highlighted that you had this meltdown after, you know, a year of leaning into surrender, non-control, all of this stuff. It doesn't negate any of the work you did. You're not punished. You're not back at square one. It doesn't take another year to get back to that state of surrender. You can choose to go back to it in a matter of minutes. You know what I mean? Calm your nervous system, ground yourself, and just get back there to where you were before you felt the insane trigger. And also give yourself space to feel that trigger. So many times we're like, no, I've up-leveled past this. I'm not going down this emotion again. And we suppress it. And instead of suppressing it, let it come up, let it come out, and use it. Go into the DI, there's still something there. So instead of pretending it's not there, feel into it. What's going on here? Why, after a year of going into all the surrender work, why is this coming up? There's more to surrender.
Exactly. And, you know, I will say this is that as much as tests are exciting because you know something's coming, we need to feel the trigger, because if we can feel it, then we can heal it. And I think that's just really, really powerful to allow ourselves to be triggered, because if we're triggered, then there's work to be done. And I like knowing that there's work to be done, because I'm like, all right, well, let me work on it. You know, like I'm someone that's like wants to roll up my sleeves and get into it. So I really think it's important to say that it wasn't just some easy process, that I did have a meltdown. And, you know, it's funny because a few weeks later, the day that I was actually supposed to start my period, we were in the mountains and I happened to be on a snowmobile, and there it was, Spirit Baby again. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I was on a snowmobile by myself. So I just started talking out loud again. And I was just like, you know, hi, you're back. Like, okay, well, this is what your life could be like. You know, Indy was running next to me and Luke was in front of me and we were in nature. And I just said, look, like, if you're ready, we're ready for you. And 4 days later, I was late. And this is the funny thing is that I waited 4 days to take a pregnancy test, because 1 day late, I was attached to the outcome. 2 days late, I was still attached. I would not let myself take a pregnancy test until I could be okay with either a yes or a no. And even if it was going to take me 7, 8 days, I checked in every day. Do I feel anxious? What is my energy going into this action? And I remember telling one of my best friends, and she's like, how have you not taken a test yet? I'm like, because I still have an attached outcome. I'm like,
Wow.
I'm not going to do it. Like, I purposely am going to wait because I want to take it in a place of surrender. I needed to have a place of ease. Now, I will say this. I had already ordered ahead of time because I felt so sure. I ordered Indy this cute little scarf that said Big Sister, and it came with a onesie that said, you know, my big sister has paws. And so like, I already had it and was like, I know that I'm going to be able to use this. And so it's January, like I take the test and I was like, oh my gosh, it worked. Like, and on our first try, you know? And so it was right before I had a meeting. Luke was on a call. I was like, I can't just go into a meeting without telling him, you know? So I like tied the scarf around Indy and I stick the pregnancy test in her collar. And he comes out and I'm like trying to film it while like keeping myself together, losing it, you know, and he's like, that's a cute scarf. And then he walks up and sees it and his response was, oh my God, it worked. And so it was just really funny and special. And, you know, when I went in for the 8-week checkup, you know, he doesn't get to go through any of this with me, which is really sad because of COVID. But, you know, we were doing the ultrasound. And when I saw this little tiny fetus, I felt like I already knew this baby. And so it wasn't as, this is going to sound crazy, it wasn't as shocking as everyone was like, oh my God, was it so shocking? And I was like, no, I know this baby. I know it. We've had conversations. And so, you know, now ending my first trimester, it's just this feeling of, you know, my family was, I told them immediately at 4 weeks and they said, it's too early to tell us. And I said, I don't have any fears around this. If I know that a lot can happen and that's okay. If this baby is meant to stay, it will. And if not, then another one will come through. And I just allowed myself to know that my job right now is to be the vessel, to be the caretaker, and to love, but I can't control the outcome. And that really, really helped me. There's only so much that I can do. I can eat well and I can attempt to sleep and move my body, but that's it. I'm not God and I'm not the universe. I'm just here to support the process. And it feels very comforting looking at it that way.
I have gotten so many chills every time you've mentioned, especially the spirit baby connecting with you. What did that feel like? So for people who are like, even just connecting with your spirit guides or, you know, connecting to that other outside source, what does that feel like for you? How do you make that contact? Is it a voice in your head? Is it a feeling in your heart? Is it a physical symptom? You know, with Lacey, like she just has that knowing. It's just kind of like, oh, this is this in her head. How does it come out for you?
It's a feeling. I usually feel it in my throat. Anytime a big manifestation comes through when I'm in a magic dark, I always feel it in my throat. I feel the energy, the aura. I don't know. This is my first time ever experiencing this. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't searching for it, which probably also is helpful. And so, you know, I think that the baby showing up twice beforehand so that when I could actually see it, it was just, yeah, no, like I know you. And I wasn't trying to force a feeling of, I wonder if I could tap into this. I was in a full place of surrender and I guess subconscious work. You know, when you're in a DI, you're in it. I mean, when I was on the snowmobile, I wasn't, but I guess I was happy and just allowing to be in the moment and being present. And I try and tap into my authentic code, my vital needs as much as I can. You know, when I think about my authentic self, I don't see a person anymore. I feel her. And so I think because I really, really try to tap in always to how does this make me feel? How do I want to feel? That's why when a spirit baby comes through, that it's a feeling, because I'm very, very connected to how do I feel in this moment.
It's so interesting because I remember when you posted a video of you on the snowmobiles with Indy running alongside you. And there was something about, like, I've seen videos of people snowmobiling before, and I just kind of don't really think about it. You know, like, it looks cool, but it's nothing special. And for some reason, the energetics of watching you in that video, I was like, oh, I feel the peace, the surrender, the calm, the love in this video. And I remember showing Daniel and being like, Daniel, look how cool. And we were like looking at it like expanders, you know, because we also wanted to get out of California and get into the snow. And we're like, this is the energy. And so it's so cool to see how that was also the moment that your spirit baby connected with you. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's been really, really wild. And, you know, it's not been all rosy. I mean, I felt really sick for a while. I didn't actually like get sick. I felt it. This was also the universe slowing me down. You know, my energy was like so low. I remember talking to Sala about it and she was like, you can't keep up the pace. And that was really, really difficult for me. I remember I actually cried one afternoon to Luke and I was like, I should be able to keep up with everything I did before. And he's like, no, you know, like you're pregnant. You can't keep the same pace. And so that's been a really cool learning experience, is slowing down. Your body just does it for you. And, you know, I want all the salt and vinegar chips and all the pickles. I mean, you name it, like, it's so cliche. It's so funny. But I feel great right now and my energy's back up and I'm able to be active. And, you know, the hard part is Luke's not home right now and Indy's away at dog camp. So now I just talk all day to the baby. So
getting DIs before the little one's even born.
I know. That's what's funny is that like they say that right now at the end of the first trimester going to the second trimester that their ears and sounds are being formed. And so, you know, when I'm listening to binaural beats or some of these DIs, I'm like, I wonder how they're responding.
That's so cool. One other thing I want to touch on too is you mentioned at the top of the episode how you were healing your relationship with food and not counting calories and weight and macros and micros and all of those things. How did that process go for someone who's also releasing control at that same time? Did you have tests that came up around that? How were you able to be successful in there? Any tips for the people at home?
You know, the most of the tests and triggers are now because my body is changing. What I realized was I healed my relationship with food last year. I did not heal my relationship with body image. And I think it's important. Those are two different things. I didn't realize those were two different things. I thought last year if I had a better relationship with food, that the result would be the relationship with your body image. It is not the same. And I don't think I realized that until now. My body is changing without my permission. And the triggers that are coming up for me right now are when I was a kid, I was constantly poked and prodded and looked at for being heavier, or I wasn't allowed to have seconds, or if I lost weight, it was mentioned. If I gained weight, it was mentioned. And so now, as a pregnant woman, everybody's watching me. The first thing they say is, do you have a belly?
Oh, gosh.
Somebody the other day touched me and it's like, I am not even really showing. I just look like I've had a lot of potato chips. So that doesn't mean that you can touch me. And so this is what's really interesting is that I am now really having to do a lot of work around body image and what does this mean? And because it's what's happening is it's mirroring my childhood right now. All of the questions being looked at, people talking about it feels very much like when I was a kid. And so me doing this work right now is going through again and seeing that the people who are talking to me about it, the people who are mentioning it also have their own issues with food. And so it's helping me see that this is them and it's not me. So I'm able to really kind of observe versus absorb. And I think that's really important. But, you know, to kind of go back to your question of last year with food, I took it through my authentic code. Did control of food, did all of this, was it in alignment with my vital needs on getting to my authentic self? And it wasn't. Was the control going to slow down my magnetism and my manifestations? Yes. So sometimes I'd have to choose. Is it more important to me right now to allow myself to control, or can I release because what I'm in search of is so much more? And sometimes one would win over the other, but I always checked in around it.
I love that. And having that discernment too. And also like Tony Robbins' philosophies always, he talks about, and I think it might even go back to Freud, but this idea that we're oftentimes in search of avoiding pain than seeking pleasure. It's a bigger motivator to avoid pain than it is to just seek pleasure. And so in a way, by framing, I get to have what I want. If I, follow this, my manifestations can come through if I release control. And if I don't release control, I'm going to kind of be not getting what I want, which is like, staying in pain. So by reframing it that way, you're kind of setting yourself up for a little bit more success too.
Yeah. And when I think about the amount of energy that I put on thinking about food, the amount of things that I said no to because it would put me into a place of having to make a decision around food, the amount of pleasure that I restricted from, when I can look at it like that, I never want to feel that again. And because I don't know what I'm having, I am also thinking about this, that if I am having a girl, it's really important to me that all of my subconscious thoughts are thinking, and I guess I shouldn't say that, I'm sorry. Because even with a boy, like either one, I want my child to feel very comfortable in their skin. And so that's another thing is that like how I feel and what I'm thinking, and this is just a belief of my own, could be passed on. And so I'm very aware of what that looks like right now.
Absolutely. One thing that I think comes up a lot for women who are going through pregnancy, and I've even seen it, with so many people surrounding me this past year, I think like 5 or 6 of my close friends getting pregnant and having babies, there's so much attention to the body and then the bounce back.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to see. And I even noticed myself, like one of my friends, posts her first bikini picture post baby a couple months out, and she looks fantastic. My inclination is to be like, wow, you look fantastic. And I really had to reframe and think, why is the attention on the body, and why am I feeding into this idea that that is what she should be trying to do when her body existing is what she should be trying to do? She just had a baby. So it doesn't matter whether, and also I'm feeding into the concept that her looking fit is ideal.
Right.
I'm continuing that. So
yeah,
I really had to check myself and be like, I'm not complimenting people on their bodies anymore, because that is my own distorted thoughts. And they don't need to be reinforced. I don't need to put that on someone else. And then also, witnessing other friends commenting specifically on their body or whatever it may be. And I'm like, oh, I know that person's, healing body image stuff too. That makes so much sense. And I think there's a little more intentionality we can do around women, around their bodies, around having babies, and just being mindful of what is this, even though we feel like we're being nice, what is the message behind this that we're telling them?
Yeah. And, I have a really great expander, Kelly Lovac. She's known on Instagram as like Be Well by Kelly. So not only did I take her pregnancy program, but, she's got the Fab4 smoothie. But her whole thing is that it's about balancing your blood sugar, and then your body just naturally knows what to do. You know what I mean? It's not about losing weight, but it's about giving your body all of the nutrients it needs, and it just naturally knows what it's supposed to do. So whether I'm going to quote unquote bounce back or not, if my hormones feel balanced, with food feels balanced, if my sleep is balanced, that is to me going to be the priority. Now, I want to be super honest and say, don't think for 1 second that I haven't thought about what will my body look like. But I always go back to, how do I want to feel in it instead of how do I want to look? Because there was a lot of attention given to me when I was younger, when I lost weight. And so that is ego, and that is outside validation. And so really shifting into now, I don't need that outside validation like I used to. And that for me, it's going to be based on, how do I feel? How do I feel? Am I in alignment with my needs? That is my priority. But as I'm tested and triggered, I just pop back into the work.
I think that's so helpful. Another expander just to put on your guys' radar, the Bird's Papaya.
Yes.
She just went through, I think, her second child, and she's been really transparent, sharing body changes and being like, yeah, this is my body now. Isn't it hot and sexy and beautiful? No matter the size, no matter what it looks like, and I think having those expanders of varying body types, all different shapes, sizes, colors, everything is so, so, so important into starting to integrate body image issues and not see everything as so black and white, and to find different perspectives on beauty and take our power back.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, when I think about where I want my energy to go, it's in feeling good, it's in nurturing, it's in ease, it's in discovery, and it's in connection. And trying to control how my body looks doesn't fit into that. And I need to check myself, and I will remind myself, but I always go back there.
I love that. I think that's such a good reminder. There's so many incredible lessons that I feel like you learned, not only towards pregnancy and having a baby, but really just integrating as that whole authentic human. And it's just so beautiful to see you drop in. There was a post you did the other day about having a smoothie outside and not doing work while eating lunch or something. And I was like, yes, like that is the vibe, that is the ease.
Well, I'm a chronic rusher, not because I'm late, but because I get dopamine hits for how much can I do in a day. And so I'm really, really trying to slow down, to feel more. And I also am thinking about, I don't want to be in fight or flight. I don't want the baby to feel any of that. It's different, in a workout. Obviously, it's important to have your heart rate up, but it's just being a little bit more mindful right now. And it's a learning experience, and I'm going to get it wrong. And some days are going to be great and some days are not, but I'm okay with that. And, this has been a really, really cool, 2020 was such a year of discovery. And, this year is, baby's due in September, and I'm just really excited to go through this process. And I am really, really thankful for the community, and I'm thankful for just the work, because I too am in it just like everybody else. I reach out for expanders, I need to process work and whatnot. And so, I think that people need to stick with it, and it's okay to take breaks, but to pop back in, because you can always count on learning something new, when you dig into the work.
So beautifully said. Thank you so much, Heather. It's been such a pleasure, even just watching your journey and seeing you grow.
Oh, thank you.
And we are so, so excited and happy for you and Luke. And we can't wait to hear the updates and see how everything goes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Of course. And we'll see you next week, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.